Golic, we have Protection One at our house.
And they protect our home, too.
Best feature for me, mobile control. I use my phone, see what the kids are doing, turn on or off the lights, or just arm and disarm the system anywhere I am.
Best feature for me, Protection One customer service. They have live operators, an A-plus Better Business Bureau rating, and offer same-day service.
Plus, with a national footprint, they protect nearly 2 million homes and businesses today.
Oh, no, we actually agree. Protection One is the best defensive player pick.
Get a Protection One home security system starting at just $99. Go to protectionone.com/Mike.
A Memorial Day doubleheader. First in Yankee Stadium, the Royals face the Yankees. Then in Oakland, it's the Tigers and A's. The Yankees and Royals at 12:30 Eastern, followed by the Tigers and A's. Monday on ESPN and on ESPN Radio. This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Greeny. Thanks for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. This is what we have for you from Monday. Rockets beat the Clippers. It's one of the all-time collapses. We debate where it belongs on the list, plus a debate over just how significant three-point shots are in the NBA. Plus, around the league with John Barry and the Hawks Al Horford and Robert Kraft, another vehement defense of his quarterback.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Good morning, big fella.
How you doing there, Green? Good to see you back
right.
again. And you know what? This was just, if you picked the NBA brackets, like your NCAA brackets, and went chalk, you were sitting good. That's exactly what we got this time around. We got chalk, as we certainly have seen before, with what happened yesterday, which we'll get heavily into, but time to start the conference championship.
You were the only person I knew who thought the Rockets were going to win that series before it started.
Woo!
So I'll give you credit for that.
I'm the smartest man alive. I knew they were going to come back from 19 down with 2 minutes left in the third in Game 6. I mean, who didn't know that was going to happen?
That feels like about 7 years
Doesn't
ago,
it?
and unfortunately for the Clippers, it might as well be. We'll get to all of those things, and again, the Kraft stuff is really interesting as it takes the Deflategate to another level. We'll do all that as we get rolling, but let's start off the top. And all the things going on, including, of course, the Rockets completing their comeback and becoming the 9th team ever in NBA history to overcome a 3-1 series deficit.
Yeah, this one wasn't too difficult, as we'll get into. They led this one wire to wire, head up to a 20-point lead in this game. There was a couple of runs by the Clippers, one at the end of the half and then at the end of the game. They tried to get it close, but Rockets weren't letting them get too close and ended up pulling off the win after being down games in 3-1.
And perhaps you say to yourself, well, why did it happen at the end of the day? Because it's the Clippers. This was the 5th game in their franchise history that they had a chance to clinch a series and move on to the conference finals. How'd those all work out for them, Golic?
They lost all 5. They're 0-5, and a lot of people pointing a lot of fingers and asking a lot of reasons that Greeny and I are basically, if you don't mind, are going to say this too. Would you agree?
Well, on some level, I would agree. They lost all 5 by double digits.
Yeah.
I mean, every single one of the games they've had that chance to win, they lost by double digits. So they've never come close in these games in which they were this kind of close. And I'll tell you exactly where I got wrong with this. It's not that complicated. We'll do that in a minute. But let's start. Rory McIlroy. McIlroy was unbelievable and has been unbelievable. And I saw someone tweeted yesterday, maybe that little run that Jordan Spieth made woke him up in April, because Rory McIlroy is just destroying the field everywhere he goes. And he made Quail Hollow look awful easy this weekend.
It's his 11th PGA Tour win, breaking Gary Player's record for the most PGA Tour wins by an international player before his 30th birthday. By the way, McIlroy won't turn 30 until 2019, and he had one of the greatest lines talking about this tournament, of which he was 21 under, broke the course record by 5. The first thing I heard out of his mouth was, yeah, this was a tough course. Oh, really? What, as far as putt-putt is concerned?
Let's give that stat one more time, by the way. He breaks Gary Player's record for the most PGA Tour wins by an international player before turning 30. He's 26. So he's got an awful lot of time to take that record and make it look awfully small. Ducks take Game 1, Western Conference Finals. And I tell you, I think a lot of people are looking at Chicago in that series. Barry Melrose gave Chicago in that series. But look at the numbers. The Ducks are not just beating people, they're destroying people.
They've outscored their opponents by 20 goals this postseason. According to Elias, 9 of the previous 16 teams with a 20-year goal differential, more goal differential, through the first 10 playoff games went on to win the Stanley Cup. So Ducks they went winning 4-1. They're taking care of their business.
Yeah, 7 wins away from the top. And then finally, so close and yet so far, Shelby Miller with a no-hitter with 2 outs in the 9th yesterday in a game that ultimately results in the Marlins, man, they beat the Marlins. They're 1 hit away from a 1 out away from a no-hitter, and the Marlins after the game fire their manager.
Yeah, for Miller, though, he's the first Braves pitcher to record 2 shutouts within a span of 3 starts since one Greg Maddux in 2000.
Off
the top with Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. I was in the ballpark for a no-hitter of 8 2/3 innings. People have asked sometimes, is there anything you'd love to see in sports? And based on how fortunate we are to be in our jobs, I've been to most of the big sporting events, Super Bowls and World Series and Kentucky Derbies and that kind of stuff. If there's one thing I'd love to see, it's to be in the building for a no-hitter. I just think, and obviously you can't plan that ahead of time, because I've seen the excitement, the way it builds with every pitch. And Jose Guzman, I believe it was I'm going to do this off the top of my head, it was the second game of the season for the Cubs in the early 90s. And he gave up a no-hitter with 2 outs in the 9th inning on a single to Otis Nixon. I was in the building covering the game. But it's incredible as that builds and builds and builds. And it's amazing how many people have lost no-hitters 1 out short of it. I don't know if because the pressure builds so much.
That's amazing.
There's a huge number of guys who've gone 8 2/3.
It is unreal, though, to lose it that late. And I would imagine, I know we've talked about this before, in this game, this was a 6-0 game. So even if it's your team getting no hit, do you still want to see your team getting no hit, or do you want that broken up? Or?
I think you want it broken up if it's your team they're pitching. I was just covering the game, so when I was there, maybe if it's a meaningless game early in the season.
Oh, we're early in the season.
It wasn't meaningless to the Marlins. They fired their manager and their bench coach when it was over.
Swept, 16-22 with all the money they spent mostly for Stanton. But I don't know. There might be part of me, and maybe I'd keep that to myself if I were watching my team get no hit to see it get finished off.
By the way, did I see this correctly? So go back 12 years, 2003. The fans will remember, if you're old enough to remember, the Marlins fired their manager. It was Jeff Torborg. They replaced him with Jack McKeon, and they went on to win the World Series. That was the year they came back to beat the Cubs, and then the Steve Bartman play and everything else. They beat the Yankees in the World Series. Did I see a stat yesterday? They were also 16-22 at the time. It's exactly the same number.
Really?
Okay, yeah. I was traveling yesterday, so I was doing my best to keep up with everything. It was exactly the same juncture in the season. They were 16-22. They fired their manager. They won the World Series. They were 16-22 yesterday. They fired their manager. We'll see what happens.
Maybe they saw that stat.
And maybe they see
so this is the time to do it.
Either that, or maybe they have a very impulsive owner who the fans there are ready to lose their minds.
Yeah.
One way or another, let's start, however, with epic collapses. And, it's tough to put a team into this group, but I don't think you have any choice. Let's start with the raspberry you gave everybody, because that's always so delightful early in the morning.
I know you love that.
I don't understand some of the talk I'm hearing about, the Clippers let this one get away in Game 5. Or, the Clippers just didn't have enough off their bench. What are you talking about? They had a 19-point lead with 2 minutes left in the third quarter of Game 6. They won the series. They had absolutely had enough to win, and they gave it away. It's a nasty word in sports, but it has to be used. They choked.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, choked thoroughly, completely, fully, and totally. There's no other way to look at it. They had Game 6 absolutely. What happened in Game 5 had nothing to do with anything.
Nothing.
They're on their home floor. They have a 19-point lead with 14 minutes left. That game was over. Had nothing to do with what happened in Game 5.
Now, listen, there's going to be a lot of talk. Doc Rivers the coach, to Doc Rivers the GM. Do they need more help? They only really have the six-man rotation going with Jamal Crawford coming off the bench, even though, Austin Rivers had the one game for him, but basically it's Crawford. So what direction do they go? DeAndre Jordan's a restricted free agent. So there is going to be all that talk. And I get it, because when you lose, especially when you lose a series you were winning 3-1, there is going to be talk of obviously personnel and what a coach needs to do better, what players need to do better, and what the GM, who in this case happens to be the head coach as well, who needs to look in the mirror more. But that's what you have to go back to. 19-point lead with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter of Game 6. So we're not even how short a time was it ago that the basketball power index, the Dickie V powered index, had the Clippers being right near the top of the strength to win the championship, right?
It was a week and a half ago.
Yeah, not that long ago. That's what we're talking about. The Clippers with the ability to win the championship.
Yeah,
and
the Warriors were down 2-1, and the Clippers were dominating this series.
Now all of a sudden, it's, oh, my God, the rotation. Oh, my God, the GM, who's the coach. Oh, my God, the coach. Do they have the right players? When they were right there. Yes, they collapsed. There's no doubt about it. But you look right to that game. That game should have been over, and it wasn't over, so certainly bad on them, and kudos to the Rockets for coming back, because as we saw yesterday, basically Houston was in this, or the Clippers were in the same position. And they made a bit of a run, as I said, a bit of a run at the end of the half, and then one in the fourth quarter as well. But Houston held them off. Exactly what the Clippers should have been able to do in Game 6 to ice this series.
Just make a shot.
Yeah.
Make any shot anywhere in the fourth quarter. I wasn't here Friday morning. I'm sure you guys talked about it at great length.
Oh, my God, yes.
On Friday morning. Just make any shot in that fourth quarter. And, you want to talk about, I think yesterday, they looked shell-shocked. They looked as though they didn't fully recover from what happened on Thursday night. And if that's the case, with all the veteran leadership that they have, shame on them.
Shame on them. It's exactly right.
They were outscored in the final 62.5 minutes of the series, 162 to 118. And yes, they play with a short bench? Absolutely. When you get past the sixth men in both teams.
Right.
Yesterday, the Rockets got 25 points and the Clippers got 4. So that's obviously a factor. The only point I'm making is that has nothing to do with why they lost Game 6.
No.
Nothing. They lost Game 6, and the Rockets did it without James Harden. So, I mean, the Rockets put a bunch of nobodies on the floor and just destroyed them.
Listen, I'm with you, and there's going to be all this talk of what the Clippers need to do and change and do and go in what direction when they had it right in their hands.
And look, I'm not suggesting that they don't need more bench. Of course they do.
No team is in the perfect situation, and they do need some more help on the bench, and there is going to be the situation with DeAndre Jordan as a restricted free agent on which direction you go, if you need to match an offer, or what you're going to do with those core players. But I think it's going to be overblown for the fact that make a shot in Game 6, and we're not even having this discussion yet because you're still playing.
I totally agree with you. I couldn't believe what I was seeing yesterday on Twitter and in some of the post-game analysis. Well, if they just had one more guy coming off their bench, or, they really let this thing get away in Game 5. They let it get away in Game 5.
Do we see what was going on in Game 6? These are all individual games. They did in Game 5, but Game 6, let's put a circle around that, a bullseye on that, whatever you want to do, because that's where you need to look. And then, hey, Game 7, you get the Rockets lead this thing wire to wire. You know what? That's kudos to the Rockets right there. That's coming out, knowing what you have to take care of, getting your job done at home. And the Clippers, that to me is more of a head scratcher in Game 7. Okay, we gave up the lead 3-1. It's now 3-3. We're into Game 7. Even though we haven't been to the conference finals, you still have veterans on that team. It's not like the Rockets are full of players that have been to conference finals, if memory serves.
Howard was in the final once. Jason Terry obviously has championship experience. But not a lot of it, no. I mean, Ariza was on championship teams. But
Ariza was big yesterday.
Ariza was terrific yesterday.
Huge.
No, look, the Rockets the Rockets dominated that game yesterday more than the score indicated through the first 34 minutes. And then I thought the game was decided in the last couple of minutes of the third quarter. They went on that run. The Clippers just were turning the ball over repeatedly. I do think, actually, that their short bench affected them yesterday. I think at the end of their second consecutive 7-game series, I think they looked a little tired. They looked a step slow, and they looked a little stunned they had lost. But what I'm saying is they had more than enough to win this series because they had it won. When you have a 19-point lead with 14 minutes left on your home floor, you're supposed to win.
You are.
And if you didn't, that has nothing to do with anything else except for your inability to close out. And if they had made one shot in the fourth quarter of that game, they would have done it. Mike and Mike, so we've got a history of epic collapses, and we're going to let you choose this morning where this one belongs on that list. And I'll warn you in advance, some of this is going to be painful listening. We're going to have to go over some areas that are going to be a little sensitive for some of you, and some of them maybe for myself as well. So we'll go through those coming up here in 1 minute, and we'll figure out where this belongs on the list of epic collapses, because make no mistake about it. That's what this was. All right? That's not taking anything away from the Rockets. I heard Mark Jackson say give all the credit in the world to Kevin McHale for not letting that team fold in Game 6 and leaving James Harden on the bench when his team was making that comeback. That's huge-time coaching, and it was. Give the Rockets all the credit in the world. They deserve it, and they get the spoils of victory. They get to move on and try and win a championship now. I don't think they're going to beat Golden State, but I didn't think they were going to beat the Clippers. So you never know what might happen. But this one is about the Clippers and this collapse of epic proportion. Do you agree?
Oh, listen, I agree, and I know you Rocket fans are going to scream and say, give our team some credit, and you're going to get credit. Listen, you're moving on. We're going to talk about you, your series against Golden State, of which you were 0-4 this year and lost by double digits in all 4 games. We'll get to all that, and we'll make the picks on that, but we do have to talk about the collapse of the Clippers here, especially that Game 6 when they had this thing won, and they could have been moving on.
Yeah, after 4 games of this series, here's the stat you were looking for. Our BPI, our Basketball Power Index, had the Clippers as the favorite to win the championship.
So when they were up
41%.
So when they were up 3-1 in this series,
yep,
that's when that was.
They were their favorite. At 41% chance at that point of winning a championship. They didn't win another game. That's amazing. All right, we'll go through the epic collapses in 1 minute on Mike and Mike after a word from YP.com. Mike, what can being listed on YP.com do for your business? Well, you're about to find out for free. YP will give your business a free listing on 2 extremely powerful customer-delivering tools, YP.com and the YP app.
Listen, you want to grow your business, you need to be seen. Every month, over 70 million potential new customers use the YP tools to search for businesses. That's 70 million. If you're not there, they can't find you. Get the maximum visibility that comes from a free listing with America's largest marketing agency for small business. That's YP. You're the expert in your business. YP is the expert in driving new customers to your business. So imagine what that free listing on YP could do for your bottom line. Potential customers are searching for businesses like yours each and every day. Do not let your competitors get them because you're not listed. Go to myfreeyp.com. That's myfreeyp.com, myfreeyp.com.
It's going to take a little while to shake this one off if you're the Clippers, but we will play music from the Billboard Music Awards last night, and Taylor Swift was the big winner.
Yeah, chat. I count 8. 8 wins yesterday, and the premiere of her new video, Bad Blood, which, of course, is the undertone of her and Katy Perry, the Bad Blood. Ooh, you know, that kind of deal.
Well, she's now taken to writing songs about bad relationships she has with women.
She has with
most of her songs seem to have been about bad relationships with men.
They showed that video last night. There was a lot of good-looking women and a lot of leather. Let me just put it there for you.
What, the Shake It Off video or her new video?
No,
I didn't see the new one.
Bad Blood. Yeah, a lot of leather.
I also saw Taylor Swift at the Notre Dame graduation this weekend.
Her brother went there, so she was there, and then obviously.
Yes, those pictures were everywhere.
Yes, they were.
Well, based on you, I follow all these people on Twitter with Notre Dame ties. Everyone tweeted a picture of Taylor Swift at graduation.
That was during the day, and obviously, the show last night. I mean, which was difficult. There's, the commercial flights out of South Bend can be difficult.
She probably had to connect in Cincinnati. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's go through the epic collapse. This is going to be difficult. This is going to be painful.
It's going to hurt.
All right, this is not going to be fun.
Yeah.
So the Clippers conclude an epic collapse yesterday. And it's not just about blowing a 3-1 lead. Lots of teams have blown 3-1 lead. Not lots, but there have been several teams that have blown 3-1 leads in all the different playoffs of all the different sports that play series. And in basketball, it was the 9th time. I was actually a little surprised when I first started seeing these stats that it's only happened 8 times before. But whatever. It's not just the 3-1 lead that they blew, but the 19-point lead in the late third quarter of Game 6 takes this from blowing a lead to an epic,
without question.
Without
question, yes.
So we've got a list of what I would describe as the epic collapses. Not just blown leads. There have been blown leads in sports history before, but just thorough epic collapses. And, of course, it begins in the modern era with this.
3-2. Little roller up along first, behind the bag, it gets through Buckner, here comes Knight, and the Mets win it!
Behind the bag. I mean, when Vince Scully says, just the way his voice rises when he says behind the bag, now before you all start yelling, we know that isn't the play that actually ended the comeback in Game 6, but it's another one where the Red Sox basically had the World Series won in Game 6 at Shea Stadium. Lets it go, and we all know what happened from there.
Do you think that any time and in any sport, because that was baseball and we're talking basketball, do you think in any sense that Bill Buckner gets either watches a game yesterday or gets a sniff that, the Rocket or the Clippers just blew a 3-1 lead? Oh, God.
Yeah. They're all going to be
People are going to play my highlights again.
Perhaps.
I mean, you just wonder, because this is what happened.
It's a horrible shame.
It is a horrible. Yeah.
But one way or another, that's epic collapses, and it's not Buckner. I mean, the collapse goes well beyond Buckner.
Sure,
obviously. CBS and MLB, the courtesy on the audio there for the legendary play on the Mookie Wilson grounder that goes through the legs of Buckner. So, but that was the midst of an epic collapse, right? You have to say the Red Sox there. That's an epic collapse.
Yes.
2003 NLCS epic.
And again, the 3-2 pitch and a fly ball down the left field line. Heading over near the wall in foul territory is Alou. He jumps and a fan took it away from him. And Alou is livid. The ball was clearly in the seats. So no interference on the fan is going to be ruled. But Moises Alou jumped and reached his glove into the seats and looked like he might catch that ball. But a fan reached up and took it right out of his glove.
They would go on to score 8 runs in that inning. And
we know who that fan was.
Thus, from Buckner to Bartman, we go with the epic collapses. They have names. That's what happens with these collapses. It's so epic that they actually have names attached to them.
Which is horrific for that person. And again, this one didn't cost the series. It cost, it
was game 6.
It was game, they still had to play another one, so you have a chance. It's not like that was the end of the game, but you still do have the names, obviously, associated.
They had a chance to get out of that inning. They had a chance to still get that win. They had a chance to win Game 7. They had Pryor and Wood going in Games 6 and 7 and couldn't get it done against the aforementioned 2003 Marlins, that team that fired Torborg, hired McKeon at 16 and 22.
Same way, yeah.
Beat the Marlins, beat the Cubs there, wound up beating the Yankees in the World Series. So that's just the beginning. In my opinion, we have not gotten to the most epic collapse of all time. But we shall, and we'll let you choose what deserves to be number 1.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Guys, when you buy your clothes at DXL, you look good. But you feel like a rock star. So if you want to look and feel like you'll find all the brands you love, waist size 38 and up, all in one awesome store. DXL, you're looking good. Right now, Harbor Bay tees are just $19.99 each when you buy 2 or more.
The best of Mike and Mike.
A few more improbable comebacks or epic collapses, however you want to look at it, because that's where we started this morning. Where does this Clipper collapse rank? A lot of people reminding us a couple of ones from the golf. And, of course, it's different when it's an individual, and it's different when it's within the framework of one event. But if you look at 2 of them that jump to mind, John Van de Velde at the British Open in 1999, when he walked up to the 72nd hole at Carnoustie, needing only to make 6, and wound up having to roll in a tough putt for 7 on a par 4 to get into a playoff. And that's the legendary one. Took off the him with his socks,
hands rolled up in the water. I mean, that just sticks in your mind.
That was bad. Oh. And then Norman at the 96 Masters, blowing that huge lead, and Nick Faldo catching him from behind and winning easily. The Cardinals of 2011, by the way, who continue to get my vote as far as the most painful loss. The Rangers a strike away from winning a World Series on 2 separate occasions that night in Game 6. The Cardinals that year trailed by as many as 8.5 games in the wild card. The Braves finished 9-18. That's how the Cardinals wound up getting in. Cardinals get into the playoffs and, of course, down to their final strike twice and winning that World Series. So they may be the most improbable champion.
Really, a team that shouldn't even have probably even been there and then go on to win the whole thing the way they did. You're right. I mean, from start to finish, that is a pretty incredible roller coaster ride.
So we'll see. If the Rockets wind up winning the championship, maybe we can start having that discussion. Yeah. They're a long way from that. Mike and Mike thanking our friends at AutoZone for their support of the Mike and Mike experience at the ESPYs promotion. It's called The Zone. AutoZone will help you get there. Robert Kraft has spoken, and he's pretty peeved. That's actually the headline in Peter King's MMQB, which was posted in the wee hours of the morning. He did what he describes, Peter, as a 50-minute phone conversation on Saturday with Robert Kraft. Kraft speaking from his home outside of Boston. Peter describes him as sounding alternately defiant and angry, convinced the league does not have a smoking gun that would prove anyone connected with the organization deflated a bag of footballs to make them more to Brady's liking in the AFC title game 4 months ago. He is convinced the Wells report distorted the science to fit a conclusion that doesn't work. He thinks the league has nothing but what he called, quote, ambiguous circumstantial evidence. Let me read you some quotes, the ones I just set aside a few that I think are the most significant. On Tom Brady, does he believe Brady is innocent? And asked if Brady had told him he was innocent. Kraft said, quote, yes, because we had the discussion. If you did it, let's just deal with it and take our hit and move on. I've known Tommy 16 years, almost half his life. He's a man, and he's always been honest with me, and I trust him. I believe what he told me. He has never lied to me, and I have found no hard or conclusive evidence to the contrary. So when I read, I was not here, of course, on Friday. My thanks again to Ryan. It's he came up big for me at a time, and I needed him, and I appreciate it. But I was on a plane, and I read every word of that thing.
You know, we can get your quickly. The report they put out, which all day during that show we said they made some good points, but they kind of, blew it with the whole deflator and weight loss thing.
That wound up getting a lot of the attention. Yeah. It did strike me, as most people, as just sounding ridiculous.
Right.
That said, it did not, for me, diminish the legitimate questions that it raised.
Well, it shouldn't.
I understand.
It took away from it, but when you get down to an appeal or the people that are going to really make the decisions here, it shouldn't have any effect.
Here's the thing. Here was what I basically took away from it. If you want to make an argument that there had been a conclusion reached, or at least a strong suspicion reached, and an investigation was done, believing that they were looking for evidence that this had happened, I thought that report that I read last Thursday did a pretty good job of that.
Gave you evidence that it happened.
That it did a pretty good job of that. Now, what keeps rolling around in my head, however, is that in some ways that doesn't make sense to me. Because what that would then be showing is evidence that the league decided they wanted to bring down Tom Brady and went about trying to find a way to do it. And I keep coming back to, and I asked Don Yee when we had him on, why on earth would they want to do that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Now, look, there's a lot of political things that go on behind the scenes that we don't know anything about. At the end of the day, I continue to believe something happened here. And I think a lot of other things that have happened are very difficult to explain away. And nowhere in that report, the context report that they put out last Thursday, does it explain why Jastrzemski and McNally are suspended.
While we say Kraft spoke and we see a lot of his quotes, there were also more than a few things that he did not speak about, and that was one of them. So, and that was one of the big questions out, and we still have zero answer to why those two were suspended.
But going back to my original thought, the first reaction I had, and I tweeted this at the time, was Brady better not be lying.
Yeah.
Because he has now, Robert Kraft, and look, he loves Kraft.
Yeah.
They have a very good relationship. You hear Kraft saying it right here. We had the discussion. I told him, let's just deal with it and take our hit and move on.
And that's exactly what should have happened. Do you pull him in and say, Tom, what went on?
Exactly right.
Yes.
And you tell me, if in that circumstance, because Kraft has gone all in.
Yes, he has.
You cannot be any more all in behind anybody than he's gone all in behind Brady. So you tell me, if some sort of incontrovertible proof winds up coming out that Brady is lying to him, you tell me.
Awful.
Bad, right?
Just awful. Because
Brady will have made it 1,000 times worse for himself.
1,000 times worse. Because as mentioned right there, Kraft, you had the conversation. And if something happened, just say it, and we'll deal with it. Because now they put themselves in a position, whether it's Tom or whether it's the Patriots, and I believe they have by May 21st to decide, if they want to appeal their punishment, that if anything's, we were discussing this Friday, if the punishment is lessened, is that enough for the Patriots? Or are they going whole hog in on getting everything done? If Tom goes down to 2 games, is he happy with that? Is he saying, I accept the 2 games? Because then you're accepting some guilt. And they have done nothing but say, we have done nothing wrong. So anything other than complete vindication, would they accept or would they take it to the courts? Because now you're really starting to balance, okay, is it worth going that far? And the way they're talking right now, the way that organization, especially Kraft, has come out, you have to believe they're coming out guns a-blazing.
Bear in mind, let's take it back to 2007, Spygate, and that whole situation that they went through. Belichick admitted to Kraft he had done it.
Right.
Not only was there evidence, there was the actual video evidence. But I remember the story of Kraft saying that Belichick, the legendary story that goes on that is sort of one that most people know, is that Kraft said to Belichick, how much competitive gain did we get from this? And Belichick said practically none. And Kraft said to him, well, then you're a schmuck.
Yeah.
And that's Kraft. So Kraft, it says to Peter King in this, last time there was no dispute about the facts. The team admittedly said what happened. It was illegal to videotape the opposing sidelines. In the end, we admitted it and took our penance.
Right.
This is very different. In 2007, we did something and acknowledged the fact of what was done. This is an accusation of wrongdoing without proof. So he is all in behind Brady. So whereas Tom Brady might have, let's in fairness to him say, might have been involved in something, in letting the air, a little tiny bit of air out of the footballs to gain a tiny competitive advantage, which, let's just say for the sake of argument, it had been proved immediately he did it,
right,
would have, in the minds of many people, been next to nothing.
Next to nothing compared to where we're going now.
Look what this is now. This is Kraft launching a full-out offensive in his defense because you know he has sat face-to-face with Brady, and Brady told him he didn't do it. And if it comes out now, if it is somehow proven to Kraft that Brady did do it, I think that goes a longer way towards really tarnishing Brady's legacy than anything else.
Without question, because we at first when this happened, we talked about if he was involved in doing this, what would it do to his legacy? This takes it way beyond. Again, just look at some of the others we've talked about for different reasons who have lied about it. It makes it completely worse. And just the way they're going off now about it, and I think the biggest surprise to them was when the report came out and there was a lot of, more probable than not, and it looks like they did more than didn't, was the punishment. How strong. I don't think they expected that. While I don't know if they fully expected the Wells report to vindicate them and say, look, we did nothing wrong, though Robert Kraft a while ago was saying he expected an apology, which Roger Goodell on our show said that wasn't happening at all. I think they were stunned at the punishment. And let me ask you real quick, because we talked about this on Friday. Do you have any problem with Roger Goodell hearing the appeal?
A little bit, yes.
I have none.
Why?
Because what term has been brought up the most about this when you're doing something on the field to the game? And we hear it a lot. The integrity of the game, right?
Yeah.
And what do we attach with every commissioner in any sport? Is their one of their main things is the integrity of the game. This is to the integrity of the game. So, as I said Friday, Roger Goodell can't win. And he can't win in a court of public opinion no matter what decision he makes. So if I were him, I would do this too. You know what? I'm the commissioner. It is my job to keep the integrity of the game. This directly flies in the face of the integrity of the game. I'm hearing it. I don't care what anybody else says, and I have zero problem with that.
I'll tell you why I disagree. Because while this, the punishment and the report and everything else have the name of Ted Wells and the name of Troy Vincent on them, at the end of the day, that's Roger Goodell's decision. I have to believe that Troy Vincent didn't just decide on his own, this is what I'm going to rule here. If he did, then that strikes me as that should have been Roger. I support, look, I'm not nearly as down on Goodell as a lot of other people are. I think he has made colossal mistakes. But everyone makes mistakes. I'm not as down on him as many other people are. In this particular case, with something that has gotten this high profile, you put this Wells report together, I think that you should not be afraid of having an independent person look at it and rule whether or not it was sufficient. And I don't think that you could argue at this point that the league office is independent.
But then the league would be admitting that the Wells report wasn't independent. This is to the NFL. You may not think so. Other people may not think so. But the league has said, Ted Wells, do this independent report. Now you want them to come out and say, you know what? Through this appeals, we're going to get an independent report to check the independent report. Now you're admitting that the independent report you did first wasn't really that. You can't do that.
Your highest profile owner, maybe a person who actually is more powerful than Roger Goodell himself, has accused you of that.
Okay.
That's on the table.
Then you know what? Let him handle the business. Integrity of the game, commissioner, handle the business. They did an independent report. Some people don't believe it was an independent report, but to the NFL, go do an independent report. Now it comes back to the commissioner. He's hearing the appeal. It's about the integrity of the game. He can't have an independent report check the independent report. That's ridiculous. That would make the league look ridiculous to do that. Let's remember the fact of the report that Robert Kraft put out with their independent guy who happens to be connected with the Kraft company. So that wasn't just maybe the smartest move in the world to then complain about the Wells independent report and then have a guy connected with your company. But I couldn't disagree with you more. You can't have an independent report on an independent report. And that makes you look ridiculous.
There's the question.
Yeah.
The Wells report is an independent report.
Yes.
But does it feel that way?
But you're missing my point. If the league now says we're going to have an independent report on the independent report, then they look ridiculous for having the independent report in the first place. They said it's an independent report. They believe it is. The Ted Wells, they say, has the integrity from his background to have an independent report. Now you're having an independent report? Investigate the independent report? I mean, come on. This almost can't look silly enough unless you did something like that.
Well, let me ask you a question then. So Roger hears the appeal, and he upholds exactly what's been done.
Okay.
Is that the best way to put an end to this chapter? Is that the most legitimate way to put an end to this chapter? Or does that only keep it going further and further?
That's up to the Patriots.
Well, the Patriots, there's the Patriots, and then there's the court of public opinion. And while I agree with you that Roger in some cases cannot win.
Can't win.
Well, but I think a lot of people like what they did here. I mean, the research we showed last week, we did a poll that shows that they think the league did the right thing.
Right.
And my point is, if they did the right thing, and maybe they did, I mean, I think that now it's gotten to a point where I would support what they've done based upon the fact that the Patriots have made this into this, sort of larger-than-life issue. I think that their initial complaint, they've now taken it and actually made the whole thing a bigger deal than it would have been prior to that. But I guess to me, the way they do things on some level in baseball, I liked, which is to say baseball rules, the Players Association fight it. They go to the independent arbitrator. The independent arbitrator rules one way or another. It happened in the case of Ryan Braun, and it's happened in a couple of other cases. Yeah. And I never viewed those as losses for baseball, much in the same way that if Roger Goodell or the league had initially come down, I know we're going all the way back now, and done when the Ray Rice thing first happened and said, I suspend you for 16 games, and then the Players Association fought it, and then it got knocked down to 8 games. Yep. Would you have seen that as a loss for the league?
No,
I wouldn't have either.
I agreed with you.
So I wouldn't consider this a loss.
But
the Ted Wells did not do this investigation in theory for the league. He did an investigation. Now we need someone to determine whether we think it's legitimate or not, because the Patriots and the most powerful person maybe in the whole league is saying it's totally wrong.
Well,
and not only is saying it.
That's up to the Patriots then. The league got an independent person, you can, again, disagree with that, to do the report. This is the report, okay? And it found the Patriots guilty. The Patriots don't like it. They appeal. Collectively bargained, the appeal goes to the commissioner.
Right.
And he is saying he's going to hear it for the reasons of integrity of the game. And I have zero issue with that. And if he upholds the appeal, then it's up to the Patriots if they want to keep going with it. You can't just keep having independent report after independent report and say, check up on the independent report. You had an independent report. There it was. That was the findings of the independent report. Now it goes to appeal. If you don't like the appeal, New England, then take it to the next step if you want.
But I think that there's two separate levels to that. Was the independent report done satisfactorily? And the second part of it is, did the punishment fit the crime? So
that's what the appeal is for.
That's what the appeal is for, and that appeal is going back to the same person who made the punishment. Because if you think anyone believes that Troy Vincent did that by himself, without conferring with Roger, I think you would find a very skeptical audience.
I can't help but keep saying it. And I was a former player, and I'm sorry to say this against my former players. Don't let it get bargained in. You let it get bargained in the CBA.
Right, because the owners had the opportunity to put a hammer to the players, and they took it. And it's another example of how it is not always in everyone's best interest, just because the fact that you could beat me up doesn't mean you should, right? If you and I are having a fight, you could beat me up until the point that I can't even get up anymore. But what have you really proved? In this case, that wound up being the worst thing that ever happened to the league, and the owners, and they deserve it. And I guess on some level, that includes Mr. Kraft, and he deserves it, because this is a terrible idea. The fact that this is going back, that this appeal of Roger's decision is going back to Roger, is a terrible idea. It makes everybody look bad. The fans are going to walk away from this totally unsatisfied. Kraft himself is going to walk away from this unsatisfied, and it may wind up in court.
It may.
Which is the last thing in the world I think the league wants.
I don't think anybody wants to be in court.
Well, except that one could argue, and I don't know if I even think this, but I think it's an argument that could be made, that the National Football League, through the NBA playoffs, through the possibility of a triple crown, through the fight, through the baseball season, the hockey playoffs, manages to be the top story everywhere again.
Don't think they want this.
I don't think they want it.
No, I don't think they want this. I would
I
disagree.
think everything brings more interest.
100%.
Was there or was there not a belief that the Super Bowl rating was influenced in a positive way by Deflategate? I mean, I just saw an interview with Al Michaels this weekend. Where was he being interviewed? I think it was in Bob Raceman's column in the Daily News. That Al Michaels was interviewed saying, attributing part of the success. Oh, the reason he was interviewing him is because if the 4-game suspension holds up, then Brady's first game back will not only be against the Colts, but it'll be on Sunday night. It is a Sunday night game. Right. So Michaels was talking about how that will get a huge additional audience based upon the fact that it's his first game back and everything, right? So maybe some attention is all attention is a good thing, especially when it's something like, no one is saying that that Tom Brady killed somebody.
Right.
He may have let air out of the football. So is this such terrible publicity for the league? It really isn't. This isn't domestic violence. This is letting the air out of a football.
Couldn't disagree more. They don't want this. They don't want this publicity. You think they're going to keep it going? Hey, let's stay in the news.
I don't think they're going to keep it going, but by the law of
unintended consequences,
that
may be fine. That may be fine, but I don't think they're trying to do that.
Can Steve come after the break? Can Steve jump in? I need to go quick break. Fine. Well, Stephen A. Smith, Herman Edwards is on his way up here. We'll talk with him. Stephen A. Smith has called in. He wants to comment. Hopefully he can do that in just a moment here on Mike and Mike, so stay with us. Which side of this do you fall on? In my opinion, in order to put this thing away, if you really want to put it away, I would have Herman Edwards' rule on it.
Mike and Mike. ESPN Radio.
With the action on the court, the diamond, or the gridiron.
Comes alive.
The NBA.
The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
Major League Baseball.
San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
The new college football playoff.
College football playoff national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
You're home for the best in sports play-by-play.
ESPN Radio.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
Our buddy John Barry, who joins us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Good morning, JB.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
We're well. Let's start by giving the Rockets their due, because we're going to spend most of this discussion talking about what the Clippers didn't do. But let's start by talking about what the Rockets did do. How did they, in your view, watching it as you did from an X's and O's standpoint, forgetting about Hart and everything else, did you see something they did markedly different down 3-1 in that series that went so far towards turning it around?
Well, not really. They kind of muck up the game here. Kevin McHale talked about that a lot. They have a style that's unconventional. Put the ball in James Harden's hand. They have great spacing. His dribble penetration puts a lot of pressure on defenses. And when you have to put two guys on him, Dwight Howard rolls to the rim, and they can throw lobs to him, or they throw it out to three-point shooters. And if they make shots, they win. If they don't, then you beat them. And they got after it defensively, caused a bunch of turnovers yesterday. And quite frankly, I just didn't see a Clipper team that played with a whole lot of desperation yesterday. And I think a major reason for that is fatigue. Finally, this thin bench that the Clippers have had all year, I think really caught up to them over the past couple games.
So as we'll continue to talk about Houston as they go forward, we would like to put a bow on the team that's out, and that's the Clippers. And you mentioned fatigue and lack of rotation, something they'll work on. But again, this was a team up 19 with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter in Game 6 to end it. So what do you believe is the first move they need to make? What's next for them?
Well, DeAndre Jordan, is a free agent. I think you re-sign him. I'm okay with having Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan on my team. And go from there and fill in the spots. J.J. Redick, I thought had a terrific season. I thought he got worn down. Really, the last 3 games he couldn't make shots. He was getting good shots. But other than that, just strengthen around that. That's a great core. I don't know what Jordan's plans are, but if you have those 3 guys, like you said, it's a team that was up 19 to close it out. They were up 3-1. They beat the defending champions in the first round. They won 55-plus games. So they're not that far off. And, obviously in our sports world, everybody panics and say this team's got to be broken up. I wouldn't be so quick to do that. That's a pretty good core.
Mike and John Barry, I agree with you that it should not be broken up. However, there were a lot of really disturbing things that I saw. What I'm not crazy about is this notion that they let it get away in Game 5. And I heard that, well, they really let it get away in Game 5. They had a 19-point lead with 14 minutes to go in Game 6. That's a game you're supposed to win. I don't care how short your bench is. When you've got star players, make a couple of shots and you're supposed to win that game. It's a nasty word in the world of sports, but I'm hearing a lot of people suggest the Clippers choked. JB, do you think they choked?
Well, that fourth quarter, yeah, I mean, you could use that word, I guess. Sure, yeah. I mean, you should win. You're at home up 19 points late in the third quarter. The team you're playing takes out the runner-up for the MVP, and you give up 40 points. If Chris Paul didn't throw in a shot at the buzzer, you would have had Corey Brewer and Josh Smith outscore your whole team. That's a choke. That should never happen. And it did. So, yeah, I mean, but the bottom line is you do have to credit Houston. That's what gets lost in this. They played an incredible quarter of basketball in the Game 6. And then they played better in Game 7. And they played better in Game 5. So you have to tip your cap. But, choke, gag, whatever you want to call it, they didn't get it done at home. They should have gotten it done in Game 6.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that because I totally agree. And I'm not trying to not give the Rockets their due. But that's a game the Clippers have got to win. And then even yesterday, I thought the Clippers played, for the most part, with a lack of poise. They had opportunities. Blake Griffin's making spin moves on Pablo Prigioni. He's getting backdoored. They're putting up bad shots. They look to me in different points of that game, right from at the beginning, then the end of that third quarter. And even with the run they made late in that fourth quarter, they looked like they I don't know if panicked is the right word or if the pressure, whatever the word is, they did not look like a team that played with great poise to me yesterday.
Yeah, I think they were spent. And really, when you're fatigued, and Golic, if you're fatigued, you're going to do things that you don't normally do because you're just not mentally there. And they had 2 turnovers in the backcourt to Pablo Prigioni that should never happen. That resulted in 2 3-point shots. I mean, you just do things that you're lackadaisical and you don't use your mind. And I just thought across the board, a lot of those guys were just absolutely spent.
And could be obviously from the short rotation, which leads to personnel, which leads to upstairs or GM, which leads to Doc Rivers being the coach and the GM. Can you get away with that nowadays in today's sports with all that's entailed with the analytics getting involved and how difficult is it? And would you want your team, if you wanted to be have a coach and the GM be the same person?
No, I would not. I think it's too much. I think there's so much out there that to be able to coach a team and be able to do the things that you need to do in a front office, I think it's entirely too much to ask. And, we'll see what happens. Maybe somebody else comes in, somebody that Doc wants to come in to help run the GM side, obviously be on the same page as Doc, but do all the day-to-day work things that a GM must do. And you can't possibly do that and coach a team, I don't believe.
Mike and Mike, John Barry's with us. JP, we'll give you the first looks ahead, at least on our show, to the NBA's Final Four. Starting in the West, Golden State won all 4 matchups with Houston during this regular season. I heard Doug Collins, though, after the game say that when he was coaching in Chicago, they lost every game in the regular season that they played against Cleveland one year, and then they wound up beating them in a playoff series, so things can certainly change. Golden State will be a prohibitive favorite. If Houston's going to win this series, John, how would they do it?
Well, they're going to do the same thing they do, and that's just attack the paint, put the ball in James Harden's hands, try to create open 3-point shots, try to create turnovers and get out on the transition. And look, Golden State, if there is one weakness, it is that they can turn the basketball over. They did it at an alarming rate against Memphis, although they still won that series. They can turn it over, and that's what Houston thrives on. But again, the ball is going to be in James Harden's hands. He's going to have to play great. But in the end, the Warrior team is playing fantastic. The last 2 games against Memphis, they're so good defensively. People don't even talk about that, obviously, with the great shot making of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. But they are so good defensively. They can switch all pick and roll. And they're gonna make it very, very difficult on Houston.
And then in the East, you have the ultimate team in Atlanta against the ultimate player in LeBron James, because he's doing a lot of this. Got obviously the help. We'll see how Kyrie Irving comes back from his knee situation. But team versus best player, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, well, we haven't seen that team of Atlanta really in the playoffs like we saw in the regular season, where they were dominant, where they won 33 of 35 games and were beating the West teams, and they've been out of sync. So can they find that magic and get back to playing that way? They can cause some problems for Cleveland. Like you said, if Kyrie Irving is not 100%, can you count on Matt Dellavedova to go for 19 a night and Iman Shumpert to win games against a better Atlanta team than Chicago was? I think this could be a lot more compelling series than most people think.
The West will start tomorrow. The East will start on Wednesday, and we'll be covering it all for you, and so will John Barry. JB, thank you. See you soon.
Okay, guys.
The best of Mike and Mike.
So with all these basketball stories going on, of course, epic collapses, and we've talked about that. The playoffs have been compelling, not always pretty. I don't think it's been great basketball in these playoffs. Injury, I think, has played a fairly significant role in that, and all of that. There have been some great moments. There have been some great finishes. Obviously, Paul Pierce throwing in that shot. If he does retire, and I don't think he will, he's talking about retiring. I think he'll come back.
I agree with you.
Just a guess on my part, of course. If he does wind up never playing again, if the last image we have of Paul Pierce
what a shot, though.
is the shot that was 1/100th of a second too late.
A shot.
It is.
I mean, just incredible.
Do you agree with me? I tweeted, I don't care that it didn't count. That's an unbelievable shot by Pierce. And I got crushed on Twitter for that. I had people saying, Greeny, it didn't count. It doesn't mean anything.
It was a great shot, but it didn't count. So, yeah, it didn't mean anything.
But do you blame him for that? I mean, is it his fault that he didn't get it off 1/100th of a second? They ran a lousy play. They took forever.
They did.
They didn't have anywhere to go with the ball.
I don't know where. Listen.
That was a terrible fourth quarter.
Wherever you want to put the blame, put it, but it didn't count. It was a nice shot, but it means nothing. It's like a home run foul ball. I mean, it's a great hit, but it doesn't count. You come back to, in this case, the game, is over. At least you get to go back to the plate and bat again. So probably a bad analogy, but it was a great looking shot, but, it didn't count.
One way or another, here's where we are in the NBA playoffs as we speak. The Hawks will play the Cavaliers for the Eastern Conference Championship. The Warriors will play the Rockets for the Western Conference Championship. These are teams that have one thing in common, and that is they take a lot of threes. The way the game of basketball is played today, a game that is now being analyzed differently than it has before, like all sports are. The use of analytics have become extraordinarily popular in basketball amongst fans as well as amongst players. I was sitting on an airplane yesterday with a guy who told me that his son, he's a doctor, and his son is a college student, and he plans on, his goal is to be the general manager of a baseball team. And I said, does he play ball? He said, only a little, but he loves the numbers.
Yeah.
He knows the numbers, and that's where it's all going. If I had my life to live again, that's what I would have done. I chose this business largely because I love sports. I wanted to be around sports, and I thought at the time that this was the closest I could ever get to sports. But the one thing I'll never get that you have is I've never won and I've never lost. No matter how hard I root for my teams, at the end of the day, when they win without me. And when they lose without me.
Tough for you to admit, I know.
It's the obvious reality,
I know.
right? Yeah, So I would give anything at one point in my life to have been in there, even to lose. There's got to be, to put everything you have on the line for something. At any rate, the point of it is, analytics are an extraordinarily important thing, and I support Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Rockets, because he's a Northwestern guy, and he's known throughout the league
as being a
pure analytics guy.
And we differ a little bit, and I think it has its place, but I don't think it should be overblown.
Well, here's the thing that analytics, I think, this is indisputable, okay? The one thing you can say about analytics is the numbers tell you what happens, okay? Now, it doesn't necessarily project what will happen, but they tell you what happened. They're not an opinion. Everything else is an opinion. The numbers are a statement of fact. So, the Houston Rockets this season attempted and made more three-point shots than any team in the league. And here they are in the Final Four. The Cleveland Cavaliers attempted the second most three-pointers of any team in the league, and here they are. The Warriors attempted the fourth most, and frankly, it probably would have been more, except they're always up by 20 in the fourth quarter.
Don't need them. Yeah.
And the Hawks were seventh. All right? So of the four teams left standing, they were all in the top 7 in the NBA in three-point shots attempted.
Right.
Why? Because the way the game is currently played, where people are shooting at such a high percentage from the three-point line, where we have developed 2 generations now of basketball players where the three-point shot has been valuable, we've gotten to a point now where that is a better shot. It's a better shot than probably anything but a layup or a dunk. Because if you make it more than 33% of the time, it's worth more points. That's just a fact. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. Now, you can try and analyze. You can do whatever you want with where you want to place that in your priority, but it is a fact.
Yes, it is.
So, Phil Jackson. I love Phil Jackson, okay? I love Phil Jackson as a player when I was a kid growing up. I covered Phil in Chicago for years. I think he's one of the smartest people I've ever been around in basketball. But when he tweeted what he tweeted last week, a couple of thoughts. For those of you who didn't see it, right after the Warriors lost that game to Memphis, where they went down 2-1 and there was a real feeling around the league that Golden State was in trouble.
Right.
Phil tweeted out there, and this was just pure trolling. He tweeted, well, one of the analytics people out there get me some numbers on how the team was to shoot a lot of threes are doing. Really, how's it going?
Yeah, well.
And he ended the going with a K, which you knew meant he was really trying to tweak at it. Well, how's it going? This is how it's going. And that's Phil trying to defend his system. And look, the Triangle won 6 plus 11 championships.
It did.
I get it. I'm not disputing it. Phil's a great coach. He's an all-time great coach in any American sport, and he's one of the most intelligent people you'll ever come across. But that was a dumb thing to do, because you set yourself up for this now.
You do?
This is what's happening. Teams who are shooting threes are winning because it makes sense. The best shot you can take in the NBA right now is an uncontested three, is a catch-and-shoot three. That's the best shot in the sport. And to dispute that, and then to try and prove to everyone, because Golden State loses one game in which they look lousy, you make yourself look bad. So a really, really, really smart guy, in my opinion, did a really, really, really dumb thing.
Yeah, listen, I agree. I mean, he tweeted it out, and it looks horrible when you put the facts out there, the numbers, as you say, out there. It does look bad, and it is the shot to take now. You see guys, driving the lane where it used to be the old try and make the bucket and one. They drive it to sink the defense, to kick it back out to a guy standing at a three-point line. I mean, it's in other sports. Football has gone the way of specialization. That tweener guy, that 6'2", 250-pounder, didn't have a job. When I was playing, he didn't really have a job. Couldn't be a defensive end. He was too small and couldn't move quick enough to be a linebacker. Now, they're making all the money. They're making a ton of money by rushing the quarterback. They'll stay in there a lot, but mainly they are there for rushing the quarterback. So in basketball, what guy is that? That's a guy that can hang around the three-point line and wait for his 10. Now, we've seen it before, obviously, from those Bulls days. You have the Steve Kerrs of the world and the John Paxsons of the world who did that. So it's not like that didn't exist, the outside shooter.
He always had another guy on his team who was a pure shooter. Trent Tucker, Craig Hodges.
But we see more of that now and more working the ball instead of getting what the old day when the Peach basket was put up there, get the high percentage shot, work it around, get it to the big man, or get us in a position where you have a high percentage shot. Now it's working around until you free up a three-point shooter, till he's standing there almost uncontested. And God forbid you have a guy who can create his own three-point shot like Steph Curry can, and now you have, a little guy like that who came in as a 7th pick who nobody saw being this great, thought he'd be a great shooter. But he's creating his own three-point shot, and his handle's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, if you get players like that, this is where it's going.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Hawk star Al Horford joins us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Al, we're Mike and Mike. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
It's a pleasure to have you. Before we get into anything else, just because we've been talking about it here this morning, I'd love to get the take of a current player, and that is about all of the analytics around the sport right now. People bring up all these different numbers. Your team, for example, was third in the NBA in effective field goal percentage this season, the importance of threes, the degree to which people are using advanced analytics and numbers when they analyze the game of basketball. From the inside, how much attention do you guys pay to that? How aware are you, and how significant is the use of analytics as you guys play through a season?
I personally am not aware of it at all. I hear a lot about it. I know that our coaches talk a lot about it, and all the teams do it as well. But as a player, my focus is more on what I need to do on the court and not worry so much about the numbers and, just going out there and playing.
I'm just curious, and your career now, you've been in the league for quite a few years now, the degree to which we have seen a greater emphasis on the three-point shot. Can you give us a sense of how that has impacted the way you play, the way people coach, and the way your team has succeeded?
It's changed the game completely. It's been a whole 360 since I've been in the NBA. One of the things, I remember by my third year in the NBA, Rick's son was our GM here, and he looked at me one day. He's like, "Hey, you have a pretty good mid-range shot, but I think you should start working on your threes." And he told me that, it was like 5-6 years ago, and I'm, kind of looking at it. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea, just to have. And sure enough, it's, the game just keeps evolving, and I feel like that's the next step. Like, every position has to be able to shoot the ball, drive it, and be a player that can make plays out there.
So one thing analytics, wasn't going to be able to tell you that we already knew is Paul Pierce going to shoot a three. And a lot of times he's going to make it. We saw, obviously, in the series when he beat you with the buzzer beater. How about that shot? First, when he's shooting it, take us through when he's shooting, even though it didn't count. When he's letting it go, take us through that point of him making it, and then you found out that the basket didn't count. Just the emotional roller coaster through that.
Yeah, from the beginning of the play, we were like, listen, we're switching everything. We didn't want to give any of them a three, me or him. We got to the point that I was on him, and there was a man that was coming that Kyle was guarding, and Kyle and I switched, which worried me at the time, and for good reason. And sure enough, Paul was able to get a shot off, and I tell you, that was tough to see, tough to watch that shot go in. When I saw it originally, I didn't think it counted. But, in the heat of the moment, you're thinking next play, let's go to overtime. We're not necessarily looking forward to it. We played such a good game, but I was ready to do it. And when we found out that, it didn't count, it was a big relief.
What's the conversation like? I'm just curious. Were you purely talking about what you were going to do in overtime? There wasn't going to be one last finishing play. There was literally zeros on the clock. So were you putting an overtime strategy, or how much were you looking up at the big screen and everything else to see what was going on?
Well, after the shot was made, I right away shift my focus into overtime. I'm like, we're going to overtime. This is what we got to do. And then I just seen Coach. He never came to the huddle. They were all, and I guess that they were already talking about it. So, once the refs went over and started reviewing it, then, there was no place, there was nothing being called. We were just waiting to see what happened. And it's one of those things that it can go either way. If it would have counted, I feel like, they would have had momentum. But since it didn't, it worked out for us.
Talking to Atlanta Hawks, Al Horford here on Mike and Mike to get ready to top seed, getting ready to take on the second seed, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who you beat 3 times this year. You're 3-1 in the regular season. What, if anything, do you take away from that?
I think it's just completely different, regular season and postseason. But, I think the biggest thing for us is we've beaten them before. And really, we just need to come out with a good game plan and just play our game. I think that's the biggest thing for us: play our game and play better than we've been playing. I haven't felt like we've been playing at that level that we were during the regular season. So, we're trying to get back to playing, that fast-paced Hawks basketball.
Tell us what exactly that means. In January, your entire starting five was named the Eastern Conference Players of the Month. Your team was just dominating people. The ball movement was spectacular. You were beating the good teams from the West. From that point forward, there was certainly a bit of a cooling off. What was the difference? What will it take to recapture that?
I just think that we need to keep playing with that like moving a lot of good ball movement on offense. I think that's it starts with us with good ball movement on offense, and then our defense needs to be good. Our defense has been good this postseason. That's what's kept us in this playoffs. But offensively, we need to make sure that we keep moving the ball around, we keep sharing it, and we keep pushing the pace. I think that when we play that way offensively, that's why we were so tough, especially in January.
From a mental side of the game, Al, when you guys are the top seed out of the East, by far the best record, and coming to the end of the season through the playoffs, everybody's talking about the Cavaliers, whether it's that they're winning or the players they have hurt, but the talk is the Cavaliers. Do you guys use that as a chip on your shoulder?
Honestly, we don't worry about it. We understand why the Cavaliers, they have LeBron James, they have, Kyrie Irving, obviously Kevin Love went down. There's a lot of expectations with that team. And we know what we have to do. We don't need any extra motivation. I'm so grateful to be in this position, to be in a conference finals. I've never been here before. So, I'm looking forward to it.
Exciting time or not, but again, the franchise hasn't been there in 45 years. So I guess a final thought, what would be the one biggest thing for the fans of your team that want to see your team win? What's the one thing your team has to do successfully to win a series against Cleveland?
Our defense has to be great, especially, individually. It's going to be a big challenge for us that they have. I feel like they have so many weapons, and even guys like a J.R. Smith that's playing so well and that has so much confidence. It obviously starts with LeBron and Kyrie, and it goes down. But individually, we're going to have to be, really good in order to have a chance against them.
No, Al, we wish you the best of luck. The series begins on Wednesday night. Should be very interesting to see what happens in your building. You have home court advantage, and we very much appreciate the time. Thanks for getting up early for us.
Thank you, guys.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNRadio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Isn't this weather great, Golic?
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a day like this.
Oh, and we're doing it upright. Some Johnsonville brats on the grill, a cold drink in our hands, feet kicked up. This is how to live.
Yeah, can you imagine all those people who have to be inside working on a day like this?
Yeah, those poor people.
Oh, I'm just so glad you found those guys to fill in and take our place on the show today.
Wait, what? I thought you were going to get the guest host for today.
No, Greeny. I said I was going to get some root beer floats.
Well, then who's doing our show right now?
Well, that's not good. We better get back to the studio.
But Golic, the brats are ready.
Oh, man, Johnsonville brats, all that full, juicy flavor that comes from only premium cuts of pork. We could probably enjoy a couple of these before we head back, right?
I don't see why not. That static seems to be doing okay, and it's certainly not going anywhere.
Then neither are we. Pass me one of those Johnsonville brats.
Johnsonville, served with pride since 1945. Find delicious recipes for the grill at johnsonville.com.
The Texas Rangers into the Bronx to face Alex Rodriguez, Mark Teixeira, and the Yankees. The pregame's at 7 Eastern, followed by first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and on ESPN Radio.